Skol Nation, it is official. The Minnesota Vikings have named Kyler Murray as their starting quarterback for the 2026 NFL season, and Kevin O'Connell made the announcement on the first day of veterans reporting to TCO Performance Center in Eagan, exactly as the reporting suggested he would. The competition is over. The speculation is done. The Vikings are going to war this season with a former #1 overall pick who signed for the league minimum and who, by every available account from everyone who watched him practice throughout OTAs and mandatory minicamp, genuinely earned this decision rather than having it handed to him by default. Let us break down what this announcement means, what the first day of veteran camp looked like, and why the next 4 weeks in Eagan could represent the most genuinely exciting training camp this franchise has experienced in years. Start with the announcement itself, because the way Kevin O'Connell delivered it and the specific language he used tell you something important about how this organization views the decision and how they are framing J.J. McCarthy's future within the context of this choice. O'Connell was direct. He was decisive. He was complimentary to McCarthy without being condescending, and he was genuinely enthusiastic about what he has seen from Murray throughout this entire offseason program in a way that reflected real conviction rather than organizational messaging. He said Murray had earned this opportunity through his preparation, his leadership, his command of the offensive system, and his demonstrated ability to make every player around him better in practice situations that approximate the demands of the regular season. That is not a default choice. That is a genuine evaluation based on real competitive evidence gathered over months of observation. The McCarthy acknowledgement within the announcement was handled correctly. O'Connell made clear that McCarthy remains an important part of this organization, that the skills he developed throughout this training camp process will serve him when his next opportunity arrives, and that the evaluation of his potential as a franchise-level starting quarterback is not closed simply because Murray won this specific competition. McCarthy is 23 years old. He went 6'4" as a starter last season. He showed genuine mechanical improvement throughout this offseason. None of that stops being true because Kyler Murray is taking the first snap of the regular season. The most realistic version of how this plays out long-term has Murray performing well this season, the Vikings making a deep playoff run, and the organization entering 2027 with real, informed decision-making about whether McCarthy's development has reached the level where he can take over this franchise going forward. This is not an ending for McCarthy. It is a development chapter with a defined timeline. Kyler Murray's response to the announcement was everything you could possibly want from a player who has been through genuine professional adversity and who has used that adversity as fuel rather than letting it define him. He was humble without being falsely modest. He was excited without being reckless. And he said something specific that is going to stick with this fan base. That the moment he arrived in Minnesota and saw the talent surrounding him on this roster, he felt something click internally that he had not felt in a long time. That is a competitor rediscovering what it feels like to be in a situation where winning is genuinely possible, where the pieces are genuinely assembled, and where the organization's stated championship ambition is backed by actual roster construction rather than empty organizational optimism. Murray knows what those conditions produce because he has experienced the alternative for long enough to recognize the difference clearly. The first day of veteran reporting produced the visual that every Vikings fan has been waiting for since the moment this quarterback competition was announced. Justin Jefferson and Kyler Murray on the practice field together for the first time, working through routes and timing throws in early informal work before the formal practice structure of training camp began. The specific dynamic observers noted was significant. Jefferson was not simply running routes and waiting for the ball to arrive at some point in his general vicinity. He was running routes at varying speeds with deliberate timing adjustments designed to test Murray's ability to anticipate and match his movements rather than simply react to them. And Murray was passing those tests. The ball was arriving where Jefferson was rather than where Jefferson had been, which is the specific distinction between a quarterback who processes coverage information and delivers the football before the receiver comes out of his break, versus a quarterback who waits for the receiver to emerge from the route and then makes the decision to throw. The former produces elite passing offense. The latter produces adequate passing offense. Murray was doing the former from the first moments of his first training camp practice as the official starting quarterback of this football team. Jordan Addison's training camp presence immediately announced itself with a kind of energy that reflects exactly what a contract year player looks like when he has a genuine chance to put together the breakout season that justifies the extension he and the organization both know is coming. Addison has not yet posted a 1,000-yard season in his professional career. Every informed analyst covering this team, every person within this organization who watches in a very public way. Jauan Jennings' first full training camp as a Minnesota Viking generated immediately positive impressions that confirmed what the offseason analysis suggested about his fit in this specific offense. Jennings is a physical, contested catch specialist who brings a dimension this offense has never previously possessed at the slot receiver position. He does not need to get open in the traditional sense. He wins football battles at the catch point through combination of size, hand strength, body positioning, and competitive ferocity that makes him genuinely difficult to cover in the situations where this offense deploys him. In a Frank Smith offense that wants to establish the run game and then attack with play-action passes in the intermediate and deep areas, Jennings' ability to consistently win contested situations in the middle of the field when safeties are rotating to cover post-snap movement gives this offense a reliable answer in the specific coverage looks that more speed-oriented offenses struggle to solve. He was outstanding on day one of veteran camp, and the coverage breakdowns he created in team drills gave Murray exactly the kind of straightforward decision-making opportunities that allow a starting quarterback to build early rhythm and confidence. The Jordan Mason update from day one of veteran camp was one of the more quietly significant pieces of information to emerge from the early practice reports. Mason arrived at training camp looking genuinely different physically than he did at any previous point in his career, with visible changes in his overall conditioning and body composition that multiple reporters specifically called out as notable. Mason has always been physically capable of performing at a high level. The question that has followed him throughout his career centers on whether he can sustain that level of performance across a full season rather than peaking in specific games or stretches. The physical transformation he is presenting heading into this camp, combined with the contract year motivation that defines how virtually every player approaches a make-or-make-it season in terms of their professional futures, suggests this is going to be a training camp where Mason makes a real emphatic statement about exactly what kind of running back he is when everything is working in his favor. The defensive line introduction under Ryan Nielsen on day one of veteran camp generated genuine excitement from everyone who watched how Nielsen runs his position group meetings and his individual drills. Nielsen has a reputation throughout this league as a genuinely elite defensive line coach, the kind of position coach who can take players with specific talent limitations and maximize them through technical instruction and competitive repetition beyond what those players would produce under less capable coaching. Within the context of a Flores defense that already has Diamond Dallas Turner entering year 3 of his development, Caleb Banks returning healthy from his foot injury for his first full training camp, Dominic Orange as the established interior presence, and Jalen Redmond seeking the kind of consistent recognition that his production has not yet generated despite his genuine quality. Nielsen's specific coaching contribution could be the difference between a defensive line that performs at a good level and one that performs at a genuinely dominant level. Day one gave the first glimpse of how Nielsen operates with this specific group, and the reports from coaches and players who were present reflected genuine optimism about what this combination of talent and coaching is going to produce. The Hassan Reic introduction deserves direct attention because his first training camp activity as a member of the Minnesota Vikings is going to be one of the most closely watched storylines of the next 4 weeks, specifically because the stakes around whether his arrival at camp reflects the motivated, hungry, redemption-seeking version of himself that this signing was betting on. Everything about how a player conducts himself in the first days of a new training camp after the kind of absence Reic has had from meaningful competitive football reflects something real about his mental and physical readiness. Players who genuinely want to be somewhere show it in how they carry themselves before formal practices even begin, how they respond to coaching, how they engage with teammates, how their body language reflects the difference between someone who is going through professional motions and someone who is genuinely desperate to prove something. The early indicators on all of these fronts will be the most informative training camp data points the Vikings organization receives about whether this signing is going to pay off the way they are betting it will. Brian O'Neill's presence at training camp, now operating under the additional motivation of the contract extension conversations that are reportedly progressing toward a resolution, was immediately visible on day one in the tone and intensity he brought to his work with the offensive line group. O'Neill is a veteran who understands exactly what contract year performances look and feel like from the inside, and the specific energy he brings to training camp when his financial future is attached to the quality of what happens on this practice field represents genuine additional motivation for a player who was already performing at a high level. Christian Darrisaw's entry into camp without any brace on the surgically repaired knee continued to generate genuine optimism about the health profile of this offensive line heading into the season. And the combination of a fully healthy Darrisaw and a motivated O'Neill on either end of this line gives Murray exactly the kind of protection environment he needs to operate the offense with the aggressive downfield attack that his skill set naturally produces. The Harrison Smith watch generated its first genuine in-camp data point on day one of veteran reporting when, as expected, his name was not on any roster activation notice and no camp opening update about his status emerged from the organization. The silence surrounding Smith's situation remains consistent with the earlier reporting that he is monitoring this team's performance before making any decision about whether and when to return. Day one of veteran camp was not a data point that changes that calculus in either direction. The evaluation Smith is conducting is about whether this team has what it takes to compete for a championship, and whether one more season of professional football is worth what it demands of his body and his family life. Those answers are not visible in a single day of training camp practice. They accumulate over weeks and months as this team demonstrates what it actually is when the competitive pressure is real. Skol Nation veterans are in Eagan. Murray is the official starter. The competition is decided, and the most important training camp this franchise has had in years is officially underway. Drop your reactions in the comments section right now. How excited are you about what Murray and Jefferson are going to produce together this season? What is your prediction for Jordan Addison's receiving yardage total in 2026? And do you believe Hassan Reic shows up to this training camp looking like the player who posted 16 sacks in 2022? Or does the extended absence from competitive football make his performance this season genuinely unpredictable? Drop everything you have got below. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel because we are right here for every single day of Vikings training camp. Skol, let's go get it.